Right, we're recording and we're underway. Lovely to have you all here on the Small Business Masterminds about time management, how we can become time management ninjas in by answering just two simple, not necessarily easy, but two simple questions and a few associated matters. I'm going to go through a lot of stuff. Put up your hand if you have a question. You can type into the chat box. You can also click on the My Mood button at the top of your screen, and when you do that, you'll see a few options to signal me. One is to raise your hand, or a thumb up, thumb down, or please tell me to speed up or slow down if I'm going too fast. Those options are there for you, and I will try and interact with those when you do. In 99% of the webinar, I will keep everybody on mute. I do that because it's the moment we start getting other people the moment I start opening the microphones, we run a big risk that we lose control of the sound quality and that sort of stuff. So I really love to hear questions, but I would prefer that we can mainly do those through the chat box. So if you've got a question, please type in the chat box. If appropriate, we can open the microphones and have a conversation. But in 9 out of 10 cases, we'll keep the microphones on mute, so you can make as much noise as you like. Nobody's going to be bothered by that, and you can slurp your tea, whatever you like. So. Time management is our topic for today, and this is what it's going to look like today. I'm going to give you a heap of stuff, as much as I can cram into your brains in the time that we have. So hang on. I love this topic. It's one of the topics I get most excited about. I get excited about my topics, so fire me if you don't like it. At the end of the session, I'm going to also give you some information about how you can take some really easy next steps to take your business further and to take your effectiveness as a business owner further, if that's interesting to you. Questions, general comment, right? This webinars are incredibly powerful tools to learn and workshop stuff in short order. Welcome those of you who just arrived. We still in the setup. We are recording. If you haven't, by the way, I haven't mentioned it to everybody yet. If you haven't yet downloaded the worksheets, please do so. Now, a very quick way to get onto the worksheet is at the top left-hand corner underneath the word chat. You see my name, and underneath there you see a link, http tiny.cc timeout page. That link takes you straight to the landing, to the resources page for this webinar, and there's a link there to download the webinar worksheets, and I strongly encourage you to do so and print them out and work through them through the worksheets as we're going along. You'll get a lot more out of it. But so as I said, webinars are really powerful things, but it's been proven time and time again that passively sitting and listening to someone talking means that you're going to forget 90% of what you've heard in less than a week. It really has. The way to avoid forgetting everything that you've heard in no time and thereby wasting your time and getting as much return on your investment of time and being part of a webinar like this is to participate. Participate. And the best way to participate and to ensure that you're focused is doing two things. One, to get those worksheets and work through them as we're going along. And two is ask questions. Type in, ask questions, argue with me, take me to task if you don't agree with what I say. Please speak up, yell and scream. The more you talk and the more you engage, the more you'll get out of it, guaranteed. If you ask really difficult questions, you have the fun to make me squirm. That's good too if you like making people squirm. But you can't make me squirm that much that I don't like you asking questions. So please do use the chat window on the left to ask your questions. Sometimes I'll accumulate questions a little bit, just to not interrupt the flow too much. But so I'll manage it as best as we can. On page 2 of the worksheet is an explanation of the webinar worksheet. So any questions about that, of course, obviously ask as well. Don't do any of this. If you're going to get distracted by Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, emails, text messages, Instagram, YouTube, you name it, turn it all off. You cannot be focused on Facebook and get value from being here. Multitasking is a myth for men as well as for women, believe me. So just turn it all off. Don't get distracted by it. We're going to be an hour. It's if you want to get value from the hour, just be here, present, mindfully, as they say. So this is our agenda for today. I'm going to check in where you are now and talk about how time management is big business. Talk about the story of Darren. And the lessons from Darren. So there'll be a story. The story, it's one of my business bedtime stories. The business bedtime story of Darren and the lessons. Then there's the two big questions. A story of my own and lessons out of that. And we're going to talk a bit more about what procrastination actually is. And then I'm going to tell you how to take how to take a next step if you want to, including a really special offer I'm making to webinar attendees, a special offer that includes supporting my favourite charity. And then we're going to take action, because nothing is ever going to happen unless we take action. And this is me, for those of you who haven't met me yet. And I am truly that handsome. I know it's hard to believe, but I really am. And so I'm Ronald Hennekrut, and I'm a business coach and a mentor, and I help business owners feel great about themselves and about their business and about their role as business owners by making business fun and by helping you build a business that sustains you for years to come. And I am also the author of the 10 Truths books, the 10 Truths trilogy, business books for people who don't read business books but should. And today's topic, today's Small Business Masterminds, is actually a topic that's woven throughout my books, as well as and especially also in the third one, the one that's just come out, the 10 Truths for Making Business Fun. And that is really about how do we make best and most efficient use of our time. So these are my outcomes. This is what I want you to take away from being here today. I want you to all walk away enthusiastic and with at least one action that you're committed to taking in your business around using your time better in your business, and feel better about your levels of efficiency while you're at it, of course. And I want you to all leave with a greater appreciation about how important it is not only to be great at what you do, to be a great carpenter or a great accountant or a great architect or a great chef, but also to be great at running your business, to be a business owner, a great business owner, not just a great business doer. Because a lot of business owners, like all of us, and I class myself in that. I used to be a builder and a carpenter, and I had exactly the same issues. We're all great tradespeople or professionals, and we know a lot about our profession or our trade, but to be a great small business owner and to build the fun business that sustains you for years to come, you have to have a solid understanding of all the key aspects of business, of developing your business, not just your profession or trade. And then really, I suppose, when you think about it, these are the main topics, the key aspects: so vision, planning, numbers, money, financial management, predictability of rhythm, customers, and sales, marketing, innovation, people, and finally leadership. And really, I suppose that's what today's topic is: leadership. But those are all the key aspects of business, right? Hang on, I'm just going to close the window, otherwise I'm going to get too much noise. Sorry about that interruption. Noise was just about to happen. Sorry about that. So these are all the key aspects of business, right? And we need to be focused on all of them to build and develop our business. And it's just too much to focus on, right? It's overwhelming and it's daunting. And so I'm committed to helping small business owners around the world become less overwhelmed and less daunted about all those demands of developing your business, and to have more fun. And so I will make you an offer about that later on. Now, before we go on, I'd like you to go to your worksheet, and on, I think it's page 3. Let me just check. Page 2. On page 2, there's a question halfway down, and the question is this: right now, this coming month, what is the biggest challenge you face in your business? What is the one thing that keeps you awake more than anything? Your most pressing issue. So take a moment to write that down, and I'll give you some silence to do so. Your most pressing issue. It hasn't been quite a minute, but I'll move on anyway, because we'll move on to the next question on the same page, and it's about your outcome for being here. What do you want to achieve by being here today? What outcome do you want to get from being on this webinar today, on Thursday evening? Write that down in the box below that. And once you've done that, once you know what you actually want to get from being here today, ask yourself the question, what do you need to do? How do you need to behave? What mindset do you have to have? What attitude do you have to be able to get what you came for here today? I don't know what that might be for you, but for you it might be turn my email off so that I'm focused on being here. Or for you it may be make sure I pipe up and ask lots of questions, or I'm going to take a minute and print out those worksheets anyway, because it sounds like that actually will help me get better benefit out of being here. So anyway, whatever it is that helps you get what you need to get here while you're here today. Let's move along. We're going to run a poll. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to put it up now. Bear with me, I need to get it. Here we go. The questions are repeated on the next page of your worksheet, the top of your worksheet there. Thinking about my time management. Thinking about my own time management and how efficient I am. This is what I feel. I am either A, ashamed because I waste enormous amounts of time. I'm the world's worst procrastinator. I'm a professor of procrastination, a lazy, undisciplined, and inefficient slob. That would be A, ashamed. B, I'm annoyed and frustrated because I know I'm holding my business back because I procrastinate and I get distracted a lot. Or C, I'm confused because some days I'm like a machine and everything just flows, and other days I get nothing done. Or D, all of the above. It depends on when you ask me. Or E, I'm inspired and excited. My days fly by. I always seem to be in the zone. I have time to do everything I want. And I'm thinking of writing a book about becoming a time management ninja. And if you're that good, I don't like you. So, vote A, B, C, D, or E. What is it? You ashamed, annoyed, confused, all of the above, or inspired and excited about your use of time and your efficiency? A couple of people have voted. A couple of people more. We've got a few people who haven't quite put their vote in yet. Yep, there's a couple more. The last one's coming through. Okay, that's it. Bang. That's right. And the results were fairly well spread out between B, C, and D. No one's actually ashamed. That's nice to hear. But there's a lot of annoyance and confusion and all of the above around. It is really hard stuff, and it's what I would expect, right? I mean, if we were all voting D, that they were fired up and excited, well, then I suppose I wouldn't have an audience, right? So, but most business owners here, and that's my experience everywhere, we're great technicians, we're great carpenters, were great architects and great web developers and great mortgage brokers or real estate agents, but none of us ever went to time management school and learned how to become efficient, right? And it's frustrating, right? Who knows what that picture is from? It's one of my favorite. It's frustrating, right? So you feel frustrated and annoyed because you don't get the things done you want to get done, and you give yourself a hard time, and you get to the end of the day and the mountain of stuff on your to-do list is just as big as it was at the beginning of the day. And it's not that you don't know what you should be doing to move your business forward. It's just that you just don't have the time to do them because you're always running around managing crises and extinguishing brush fires. And even if you find some time to do the business development stuff, you waste half your day procrastinating and getting distracted by the stuff that doesn't actually matter. And in the meantime, there's always another crisis to manage somewhere. You run around from employee crisis to client crisis to supplier crisis to compliance crisis and cash crisis, and all the way back to the beginning again, and you're always behind. And what that leads to is this. You know that you should spend more time doing the business development instead of being in the business. After all, everyone always tells you so. You should be on the business, not in the business. And hence, you feel inadequate, not good enough as a business owner, like you're not quite cutting it, right? And what's worse about that, in a way, is this. Everyone, all those everyones that are always telling you that you should be working on the business rather than in the business, the problem is annoying, but true, they're actually right. You simply cannot build a fun, healthy, sustainable business by being in the business. You can't do it. It's by managing crisis and swinging the hammer, as it were, all the time, you can't do it. Developing a business that sustains you for years to come takes dedicated focus on being an effective business owner as opposed to an ineffective business doer. And so the business stagnates and you feel frustrated and overwhelmed, and it's not a great set of outcomes. And that's why we're talking about this today. How can we take the first steps to start to get less overwhelmed, daunted and frustrated, get our business moving again in the right direction, and start to have fun in business like we used to when we started the business, and build a business that sustains us for years to come. So here we go. I'm going to tell you a few stories. So time management is a really big topic. Human beings, we love giving ourselves a hard time over our lack of efficiency and discipline. We just love beating ourselves up over it. And in my experience, small business owners are actually hardest of all on themselves. Nearly every client I've ever started working with, and it's literally just about everyone, will at some stage early on in our engagement confess to me that they are truly the world's worst procrastinators and lazy slobs, and that they specifically want me to get really tough with them because they deserve to feel the impact of my size 13 boot on their backside. I think time management is only exceeded by dieting as a favourite motivation for self-castigation. And time management, like dieting, is also big business. In researching this topic, I went to Amazon. And I typed in the word time management in the books section. Guess what? I've got more than 20,000 titles. More than 20,000 titles on time management. Titles such as Time Warrior, Eat That Frog, Getting Things Done, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and there's an eighth habit as well. The 4-hour work week, etc., etc., etc. That's some of them. And what is especially amazing is that all these 20,000 books make a solemn promise. The solemn promise they make is that within the covers, within the covers of the book is a unique and proven method to take you from being a slob to being a time management ninja and a master of efficiency. Pretty amazing, right? So with 20,000 unique and proven methodologies. So which of those 20,000 unique and proven methods work best? And if you pick the wrong one, if you pick the wrong one at a 20,000, does that mean you're wasting more time? Good question, right? I got myself in on the act some time ago as well. I designed my own, was this about 5 years ago? I designed my own unique and proven time management method 6 years ago. It was all based on the concept of juggling balls and making sure the balls wouldn't hit the floor. It involved a whiteboard and different coloured stickies, and the different colour sticky could be moved around the board. And as long as I made sure that the balls didn't hit the floor, any of the balls didn't hit the floor, well, brilliant. It was absolutely a brilliant system. There's no other word to describe it. It was brilliant, and I was brilliant. I can't tell a lie. My time management method was going to change the face of modern business, but when all was said and done, I actually have to admit that really it was just another approach to managing a to-do list. And that's the deal, see? It really is. All of these 20,000 titles on Amazon, as well as my own brilliant method, all of them are, all of the unique, proven methods fall into two camps. Firstly, there's the many variations on working with to-do lists. Some of those involve a perpetual list. Others involve a new list every day or every week. Some list methods tell you to divide your tasks in 3, 4, or 6 different categories, and others suggest you just dump everything, no matter what, and no matter how small or large, in the same list. And some ask you to filter out the most important tasks, do them first. Others suggest you do the one you like least first, etc., etc. And the second approach revolves around varying ways to manage your diary and your day. Some tell you to keep lots of blank space in your diary. Some direct you to plan your day in 10-minute blocks. And others ask you to just stick the big rocks in your diary. I worked briefly, it was briefly, very brief actually, graciously, briefly for a specialist time management consultancy. And we consulted to corporate clients in the city. And the consultancy revolved around some specific, unique and proven IP, intellectual property, that we taught to the clients, and the IP largely consisted of dividing your tasks up between those that took more or less than 10 minutes to complete. So those that took more than 10 minutes would be blocked out in your diary in Outlook or Gmail or whatever, and those that took less than 10 minutes to complete would go in your task list. It also involved changing a setting in Outlook that allowed the minimum time interval you could block out in your calendar down to 10 minutes. But now, I want you to be aware that I'm taking enormous personal risk here, right? Because sharing this IP, this intellectual property with you, I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement 6 years ago when I started working with this team, with this company, and because clearly they felt that the sheer brilliance of their methodology had to be protected. But by sharing it with you, I'm in breach, and I may well be run out of this town, tarred and feathered. Please don't tell anyone, because the consultancy charged absolute fortunes for this unique, proven, and brilliant technique. And the corporate clients paid it. It simply never ceases to amaze me what the corporate world will pay for. Did it work? And what about those 20,000 titles on Amazon? And what about my own inspired methodology? Do they work? Of course they do. Of course they work. See, otherwise they wouldn't have published the books in the first place, right? The methods all work. All work for the person who wrote the book. But that ain't you, is it? Here's another story from a few years ago. A keen observer might note that all my stories take place a few years ago, but they are all real. I might have changed the names a bit, but they are all real. So a few years ago, I had a client called Darren. I actually met him again recently. It must have been 7 or 8 years ago, but I actually bumped into him the other day. Anyway, Darren used to beat himself up something shocking over his laziness, his procrastination, and his addictions to distractions. Actually, this was before Facebook, so he wasn't really addicted to Facebook, but he nevertheless thought he was addicted to everything, all kinds of distractions. So one Monday, Darren came into one of our sessions in a particularly foul mood, and to my inquiry about his weekend, he snapped, I didn't get that bloody text return done again all weekend. I'm just so lazy. And so when I asked him what had happened, he responded with, well, I spent all weekend... I spent all weekend cleaning out the garage, mowing the lawn, watching the rugby, taking my girlfriend out to lunch instead. And to be honest, I've been procrastinating for weeks over this tax return. And even after making the decision to get it done this weekend, I still never even made a start on it. And I said, wow, that sounds really bad, right? But so did you enjoy yourself doing these other things? Well, of course, he replied. It felt really good to get those things done and was more, the garage clearly needed cleaning, if that photo is anything to go by. You couldn't get into the garage anymore. The lawn was like this high and he just had his hip to hip height. And the Wallabies won, would you believe it? And my girlfriend really appreciated the attention. However, that's not the point. I still didn't do my tax return after making a commitment to do so. Isn't that sweet? But I understand you're disappointed, I said, but tell me, have you always done your tax return? And Darren pondered for a little while and responded, well, yeah, ever since I was 18 and my father taught me how to do it. It always feels really good completing it myself, getting some kind of refund. Okay, I said, so have you ever been late putting it in? Are you late with it now? Oh, no, he said. That'd defeat the purpose, wouldn't it? I'd get a penalty if I was late, and that would reduce the fun of getting a refund. No, I've never been late, and I still have a couple of weeks to go now, but that's beside the point. I just wanted to get it in a few weeks early in case something came up. Yes, of course, I said, in case something came up. Maybe something came up. Maybe the lawn, the garage, the game, and your girlfriend were more important this weekend. What do you think? Look, is there actually any real reason to assume that you're not going to get your tax return completed in the next 2 weeks on time? Well, in case you're interested, Darren actually completed his tax return the next weekend, and he still had a week to spare in case something else came up. And I have no doubt that now, a few years later, so 8 years later or something, he will still be completing his tax return and getting it in on time. He probably will until the day he dies. And that's the lesson. Because I think there's a couple of lessons from Darren, actually, not least doing your tax return may be false economy measured against the joy of cleaning out a garage, right? But anyway. So what are your takeaways from that story? On your worksheet is space. On your worksheet on page 4. Bottom of page 4, on your worksheet there is space to write down your top takeaways. Your top takeaways, your interesting observation, or the interesting observations from others. So feel free to write down your own thoughts on your sheet, and I'd love if some of you want to share some of your comments and feedback. And so while we're waiting for those questions or feedback, I'll summarise the points of the story from my perspective. You see, I think we all love to give ourselves a hard time all of the time. We do. It's clearly something that dates back to ancient Stone Age history or something, to the days when men were men and women were women. Something, when we ran away from saber-toothed tigers and women were dragged into the cave by their hair or something like that. I don't know. But what I do know is that all of us, and business owners more than most, beat up on ourselves something fierce. Business owners generally are just so ridiculously tough on themselves. It just never ceases to amaze me. Darren had told himself that as a responsible business owner, he was to have the tax return completed some weeks early, and every week it wasn't completed yet, he used as an excuse to flagellate himself. And we'll get back to that in a minute. So, your turn. Any questions or comments? Please type them in now. So we've got a couple of comments here already. One from Bob in Newcastle. Bob, yes. Great question. All right, I will share it. Bob wonders if Darren got lucky that weekend after taking his girlfriend to a romantic lunch instead of doing the tax return. I'm not sure that that's the kind of thing that my clients share with me, so I'll have to pass up on that one. Kerry in Bathurst. Isn't being tough on yourself one of the reasons that things get done? Don't we have to be tough on ourselves to make sure that things get completed on time? So that's a really great question, Kerry. I think it really depends on how you look at it. I mean, of course, there's no doubt. If you've been stoned, if you've been high since the Beatles came back from India, and I'm showing my age there, of course, but yeah. If you've been high for the last 30 years, then you've probably not got, you've probably not managed to get a business off the ground, or anything else for the matter, off the ground for that matter. So yes, a certain amount of self-discipline is a useful attribute for business owners, absolutely. But see, if you'd been stoned since your adolescence, you probably wouldn't have got a business off the ground at all in the first place. The fact that you have started the business, or in the process of doing so, the fact that you have gotten to where you are already means that you have a certain amount of initiative and discipline and determination. Darren had done his tax return on time for 19 years. Darren was entitled, don't you think, to have a little more trust in himself by now. He was entitled to trust himself to get it done on time, and he was entitled to trust his judgment when he decided to put his girlfriend first that weekend, because he would undoubtedly get it done and on time. And by learning to trust himself, he'd become so much happier and calmer, and he would have enjoyed this weekend so much more. You might say, yeah, but it's better to be, distrustful and skeptical, and because that's the only way to stay sharp, the only way to be efficient and effective, and that's where you'd be wrong. Because you see, if you're in a frame of mind like Darren was when he came to see me, you'll be least likely to do great work, least likely to be efficient, and most of all, least likely to be creative and resourceful. All characteristics that you need to build your business. So doing what you can to allow yourself to feel happy and calm is actually going to lead to much greater outcomes all round. Question from Anita. I often miss out on opportunities because I don't get it in on time. Yeah, okay, well, I get that. Thanks, Anita. And that can mean a number of things. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're a procrastinator, and we'll get into greater depth about that, because we're going to talk about what procrastination often is about. But generally speaking, I would say that it's either likely that you've simply got too much to do and you simply cannot do it, or, and that's a big one, if you don't get things actually in on time, you don't get them finished, that there is something else getting in the way, and it's rarely that you're an innate lazy person. We'll get to that in a moment. Because we're going to get to some really interesting bit here, because I'm going to tell you something that's going to rock your world, something shocking. I hope you are sitting down. Because you see, people only ever do anything in life for one or two reasons. Only one or two reasons is why we do anything in life. And that goes for you too, Anita, for all of us, including me. The two reasons it is. The first reason is we do something because we want to do this thing. We actually want to do it. We're looking forward to do it. We can't wait to do it. That's one reason we do it. We do stuff. And the other reason, the only other reason we ever do anything, if it's not number one, number two is this, because we do not want the consequences of not doing this thing. So either we were driven towards doing it because we want to do it, we're excited about it, we let us at it, or there is a fear that says if we don't do this, something really bad happens, and it's truly really bad, not just a little bit bad, truly really bad. Two reasons, one of two reasons, the only two reasons. You see, here's the point about Darren. Darren wasn't a lazy, procrastinating, good-for-nothing. He wanted to do the garage. He wanted to deal with the grass that was waist-high. He wanted to watch the Wallabies win a game of rugby for a change, and he wanted to spend time with his girlfriend. He actually wanted to do those things, and he didn't particularly want to do his tax return that weekend. And what's more, question two, the second reason, the consequences of not doing his tax return that weekend were actually minimal. He still had 2 weeks up his sleeve. Darren actually made entirely the right decision at that time. Imagine if he'd been as disciplined as he wanted to be, and he'd done the tax return instead of the lawn and the garage, etc., and he would potentially have a much better reason to be down on himself after all then, because he'd probably have regretted not watching the game on Sunday because the Wallabies won, and he would regret not spending the time with his girlfriend and all that sort of stuff, but the tax return could still wait for 2 weeks. So time management, any time management, procrastination, laziness, isn't about procrastination and laziness, and we're going to dig in some more about that a little bit later on as well. But it starts with those two questions: how much do I actually want to do this thing, and how much do I want to avoid the consequences of not doing this thing? It really is that simple. It really is that simple. As long as you do not have 100% clarity over those two questions, you'll always confuse the hell out of yourself, and you'll be exasperated with yourself for being such a procrastinator, and you will always be looking around for another unique and proven time management method to turn yourself into an efficiency ninja. So by all means, please go and read some of the books on how to manage your time better and become more efficient. There's some really great ones out there, right? Personally, I'm a great fan of Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and approaching and his approach of assessing urgency versus importance. There's a worksheet about that on the resources page. Actually, on the resources page of this webinar, there's a worksheet that's inspired by Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants of time management and the urgent versus important matrix. You can download that. But without that clarity, without that absolute clarity about those two questions, no time management method is going to ever make one iota bit of difference. Absolutely. Now, there's more to being efficient and effective than just answering those two questions. It's not the end of the matter, but you've got to start by answering those questions. Just by answering the two questions, you're not suddenly going to be procrastination-free forever, obviously, but it absolutely starts there. Any questions at this moment, or we'll move on to what else there is? Other reasons to procrastinate. But once you've answered those first two questions, stuff can still go wrong. And there's a couple of other really important considerations that you need to become aware of in order to avoid procrastinating and feeling down on yourself. And here's another story. This is a story about myself, actually, and it took place a few years ago. It takes place all the time, actually. So I've actually done a lot of writing in my life. I'm a reasonably good writer. I was actually trained as a journalist in the dim, distant past before I became a builder in Holland a long time ago. So I've had a bit of practice and schooling, and I actually enjoy the process of writing. But for years, I wouldn't get much writing done at all because of endless procrastination. Endless procrastination. And I'd get stuck once upon a time, and then it would be the end, right? So when I decided to write an article or whatever, I could literally spend literally days, procrastinating and wasting time and getting distracted by everything under the sun. And I used to be beat up on myself like you wouldn't believe, truly. But most of the time, this is what happened. Most of the time, if I really persisted, in the end, something would be written. And more often than not, I'd feel quite happy with the outcome. But because it took me so much time to actually sit down and write, because I'd procrastinate so much before pen would actually go to paper or keyboard, I'd rarely end up writing stuff because I just didn't have that much time. I just didn't have much time it would take me to write something, right? Until one day I realized that the reason I procrastinated and wasted so much time when I decided to write something was that I didn't know what I was going to write. And because I didn't know what I was going to write, I couldn't sit down and I'd find different things to do instead of writing. But when I realized that this situation was causing this procrastination, I decided to change my approach. So I decided to trust myself that something would come out as long as I'd actually start writing. So now, when I want to write, I simply sit down behind the keyboard and I start to write. Whatever pops into my head, stream of consciousness kind of stuff, might be writing about the weather or the weekend I've just had or a book I'm reading. Absolutely no idea what I'm going to write, but I just start writing. Just write words down on a page. Nonsense. I'll write complete nonsense if I have to. Doesn't matter. Once I start writing, I know that it will come, and it always does. And all the nonsense I wrote to get started from, I just throw it out again, right? So these days, I don't procrastinate anywhere near as much anymore, and I get a lot of writing done. I'm getting better at writing, and I enjoy it, and it's good for my business. It's really changed my life and my business, right? That is the point of the story, that once we have absolute clarity over what we want to do and what consequences we want to avoid, those two questions, we can often be waylaid by a few other hurdles that lead to major attacks of the procrastination disease. We don't know how to actually do the thing we want to do. The task we've set ourselves is so big and the enormity of the task is overwhelming and we just don't know where to start. And we're actually unsure what this task involves. And I'll just tell you another story. It actually happened today with a client. And the client had, about 3 weeks ago, had set himself a task to organise one-on-one meetings with all his staff about individually with all his staff. About the next year in business, about goal setting, about progress management, or whatever you want to call it, the classic staff management stuff, progress meetings or performance reviews or what do you want to call them, but he wanted to talk about progress with them. And so 3 weeks ago, he came to the conclusion this is what he wanted to do, and we've had meetings since. And in every week that we've met since, these action didn't get done. It just wouldn't get done. It just wouldn't get the meetings booked in and organised and stuff. So finally today we said, okay, well, what's the deal here? What's going on? The bottom line was the reason he procrastinated, and he was getting quite pissed off with himself about this, right? The reason in the end that it turned out that he procrastinated and didn't get this task completed was actually because he didn't know how to run these meetings. He hadn't actually really worked out in his head how to best run these meetings so that they had the most positive effect for him and his staff. And so when we spent half an hour digging around in that, we worked out how how to actually run these meetings and how to set up an agenda and how to invite people to in the most positive and empowering way and inspiring way. And now he's really excited, and I can guarantee you when I speak to him next week, he will have booked all those meetings in, and he will have done one or two of them already because he's completely excited. He knows exactly how to go about it now, and that's what I said. The three reasons we don't do things, we don't get things done. Once we know, we've answered those first two questions, is often we don't know how to actually do the things we want to do, or the task is so big and the enormity overwhelms us. or we're actually unsure what the steps involved in this task is. And I love that cartoon. The task I must undertake is towering over me like a great big monolith. It's too big to contemplate, so I'll just go look at the internet. Yeah. We might just go and spend some time on Facebook. And they're probably, there's probably more of those kind of hurdles, variants of these hurdles, right? That we don't know how to do it, or it's too big and it needs to be broken down. But they're all variants of the same thing, stuff that gets in the way. And then we get tempted by distractions, because this was happening with this client who I was talking to about today as well. Exactly the same thing. Because I see it is happening all the time. I could probably tell you a different story at least once a week. A client might decide, right, this week I'm gonna write a marketing plan. That's what I need to do. So next week I'm going to start writing. And then in our next session, nothing's happened about the marketing plan, and the client either makes some kind of excuse or beats himself up for being such a procrastinator, and this might go on for another couple of weeks until we really dig in and uncover what's going on. And 9 times out of 10, what we find is that the client actually isn't clear, that the person isn't clear how to go about writing a marketing plan, what the steps are, where to start. And then when we spend some time working that out, getting clear about the steps in the process of writing the marketing plan, the whole procrastination issue just goes away and people become quite efficient. Like I said, there's many variants to this same mechanism. 9 times out of 10, when you get attacked by the procrastination disease, it's a sign that there is something wrong with your clarity, or that the donuts are too good, or with your understanding of the task, or your confidence that you know how and where to start. Working with business owners for many years now, I actually think that the concept of laziness doesn't exist for business owners. It might exist for Homer, but not for business owners. I don't think business owners are ever lazy. If you were a lazy, procrastinating person, you probably wouldn't have started the business to start with, right? I think the phenomenon of procrastination and laziness is always a sign of something else. And once you clear away those first 2 questions and have clarity about those and the various hurdles that I've talked about, things start falling into place again and life starts flowing again. It always does. So many problems that business owners face in the day-to-day running of their business are caused by not giving themselves enough space, allowing yourself more time and more space to ask yourself those big questions and to investigate what's going on. When you find yourself procrastinating truly is one of the big steps towards having more fun in business and building a business that sustains you for years to come. I promise you. So let's have a look at the top takeaways. And please, if you've got any questions, any of you, start typing them in now. That'll be cool. And there's also some space on, space on page 5, top takeaways, to write some more comments for yourself or takeaways you get from others. So what are the top 3 insights you've had so far? Being on this webinar, what do you see now that you didn't see before, or what have you got greater clarity about now that you didn't have before? Or maybe, what are the top 3 reasons you don't agree with anything that I've said? Or the top 3 questions? In other words, take a moment to focus on the most important stuff that's going on for you at the moment. I'll give you another minute's silence. I shall move along. And I'll give you my big insights, and then you can, and then we'll see if there's some other questions that have come up for you guys. So, these are my big insights. All time management methods work for the person who designed it. That doesn't mean that they're going to work for you. Second, all time management methods can be divided in 2 types. Those that teach you how to manage your to-do list, and those that teach you how to use your calendar. Third, avoiding procrastination and becoming an efficiency ninja starts with asking yourself The two questions: why do I want to do this thing? Do I really want to do this thing, or do I really want to avoid the consequences of not doing this thing? That important enough for me? Unless you have clarity over those two questions, you cannot and will not be efficient. Beating up on yourself doesn't make it any easier for you to do great work. It really didn't make Darren's life any better by beating up on himself. And it didn't make any difference to his level of getting things done. He got things done as and when he needed to get them done. And procrastination and getting distracted is usually a sign of some other kind of hurdle. And if you have started a business, you are not by nature a lazy person or a procrastinator, I promise you. And to be efficient and effective as a business owner, you have to allow yourself space and time to reflect on your tasks and priorities. So we got some questions, some comments, some feedback. Type in more if you want. Lisa, Brisbane. From Brisbane, thanks, Lisa. I've heard lots of great things about the book Getting Things Done. That's by David Allen. Wants to know if I recommend it. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I think Getting Things Done is a solid method. It works well. It works well if your brain is the type of brain that likes working with big lists. My brain isn't that way inclined, so it doesn't work for me. But as I said, I love Stephen Covey's approach to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in the 4 quadrants. And as I said, there's a worksheet on the resources page you can download about that. Have a look at it. But sure, Lisa, GTD, that's how it's referred to, GTD, Getting Things Done. Or as some mates of mine in the Key Person of Influence, I know any of you guys know Key Person of Influence, they talk about GSD, Getting Shit Done. Anyway, GTD, as it's referred to, if that works for you, it's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with the method. Several of my past clients in the past have worked with it, and there's actually some apps for GTD that for both iPhone and Android, and so it's quite good. But just think about the message that I've been hammering in this webinar. Don't think GTD or Getting Things Done or any method is going to fix your problem unless you give yourself the space and time I talked about before. Cool. Ken from Sydney. Ken asks if I still use that method that I developed with the juggling and stuff. Yeah, well, great, thanks, Ken. No, well, the short answer is no, I don't use it anymore. Because, it outlived its usefulness. I don't need it anymore. And my life, my work, my brain has changed, whatever it is. And it sort of demonstrates another thing about that time management. Not that I don't procrastinate or get distracted, far from it. Facebook is a terrible affliction. And the constant barrage of email can screw my day up just as enormously as it can be for yours. And sometimes I'm just not in the mood to really ask myself the questions, and sometimes I just want to fiddle all day as well. And a lot of my time is taken up by developing new ideas to market myself and writing, as I said. And it tends to take a lot of thinking time. So sometimes it can look as if I'm wasting time, but really I'm just mulling things over, letting things bubble away in the brain. But sometimes I really need to get certain things done, and I can't allow myself to be distracted by email and Facebook or whatever else there is. And if that situation arises, sometimes what I'll do is I set up my laptop on a different table than my normal desk. And then I only open Microsoft Word, don't open anything else on my laptop. So I don't allow myself to open Facebook. Don't even allow myself to open my email. And so if I need to check my email, I'll just check it on my phone so that I don't open it anywhere else. And when I do that, it's amazing how much stuff I can get done. But that only happens when I have absolute clarity over those two questions, right? The other thing I did is I swore I'd never go on Twitter again, because Twitter just that drove me slightly insane. And one day I just installed it from my computers, and I just don't go there anymore. It's just 5 or 6 years ago. I remember starting getting up in the middle of the night. Like you get up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, and I sort of start making this detour to my computer to check if there was any messages on Twitter. When I realized that I was doing that, I was going slightly insane, and I threw it out. Sort of joining a 12-step program for Twitter Anonymous or something. Anita, I think the reason I procrastinate is because I worry it's not the right choice to do it, so I fill in my time doing things. Yeah, perfect. See, perfect. That's exactly what I mean. Thanks, Anita. So I'll just share that a bit better with everybody. Anita says, I think the reason I procrastinate is because I worry it's not the right choice to do it. So I fill in my time doing things I know I can do well. See, it's perfect. It's exactly what I meant with when I said before. Where are we? I said this. These other reasons other hurdles that get in the way. We don't know how to actually do the thing we want to do. We don't know where it's too big, or we just simply don't have clarity if it's actually the right thing to do. So it's perfect. Thanks for that, Anita. So moving on. So I mentioned before that I want to make an offer to you that I've designed to make it as easy as possible for you to take a step forward without feeling daunted and overwhelmed about all the key business development priorities. And I ask you to focus on your most pressing issue and write it down, right? We'll get into actions that come from this webinar as well, but just briefly allow me to talk about this. So I ask you to focus and write down your most pressing issue, the biggest challenge in your business right now. What is your most pressing issue? I hope it's not as bad as this woman's, because that would be really hard, wouldn't it? So is that thing that you wrote down, is that still your most pressing issue, or has something moved or shifted a little bit while you've been on this webinar? Is something else your most pressing issue, your biggest challenge in business right now? But just checking with yourself. And here's the deal, because I want to help you with that most pressing issue. I want to help you find some really simple steps forward in relation to that big challenge. And I've got a super special, easy peasy, lemon squeezy offer for those of you who attend these webinars in relation to that. This is what you'll get. You'll get a really powerful written business health report. So you'll be able to do a survey, an online business health survey, and you'll get a 7-page report from that about the state of your business right now. You'll get a hard copy of one of my books, any of the 3 10 Truth books. You might prefer the last one, 10 Truths for Making Business Fun. Then you get to sit down with me for 75 minutes over Skype. So 75-minute Skype session one-on-one, just you and me, to gain clarity and focus about this most pressing issue and finding ways through it, solving the dilemma and finding steps to move forward, because you'll walk away with clarity and insight and with one or more simple action steps that will start to move you forward past that big pressing issue and towards having more fun. I promise you, and this is the offer, and all you have to do is to make a donation of $100 to the Wayside Chapel in Sydney, my favourite charity, the Wayside Chapel in Sydney. It's a homeless refuge and church here in King's Cross. I support them a lot. And so it's truly the most fun and effective charity donation you've ever made in your life. I can guarantee you that. The offer is also on your worksheet with the link, I think. Let me see, page 7. There's the link there as well. I might actually just type in the link to the Wayside Chapel, the waysidechapel.com. thewaysidechapel.com. Just click on that link and you'll see there's a button called donations. You make a donation for $100, let me know, and we book in, we start the process anytime you are. Back to the grind, moving right along. I'll just remind you of those big principles again. All time management methods work for the person who designed it. That doesn't mean they're going to work for you. Time management methods can be divided in two types: those that teach you how to manage your to-do list and those that teach you how to use your calendar. Avoiding procrastination and becoming an efficiency ninja start with asking you, how much do I want to do this, or how much do I want to avoid the consequences of not doing this thing? And unless you have clarity over those two questions, nothing's going to happen, or you're not going to be efficient. Beating up on yourself doesn't make it any easier to do great work. It really doesn't. And procrastination and getting distracted is usually a sign of some other hurdle, like that wonderful one example that Anita just gave us. If you started a business, you're not by nature a lazy person. You really aren't. And to be efficient and effective, you have to allow yourself time to reflect on your tasks. So now, action. Because nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to change unless we take action. As I said, there's a special resources page. Right at the top of the chat window, you'll see that link there, tiny.cc time L page. And so it goes back to this webinar and the workshop. The recording of this webinar will be on that page tomorrow. At the moment, there's an old recording of an old webinar on there. Yeah. So this is what I want you to do. Important. First, set some time aside over the next few days to be able to get into this topic. Be sure to do it. If you don't set some time aside to do something with what you've learned and the information that I've given you today, in the next few days, get this, if you don't do that, then coming on this webinar has been a waste of an otherwise perfectly good Thursday evening. A waste of your time. The only thing that ultimately makes any difference is what actions you take, and you cannot take action unless you put time aside for it. So these are the next steps. There's a few simple actions that I want to encourage you to take in the next few weeks, right? Yeah, I've got to check something. Few simple things. So a few simple actions. First, I'd like you to go to that resources page and download the articles and tools that interest you that are on that page. There's a whole bunch of good tools and resources that you can play with, whatever you like. Especially have a look at, because it's one of my favorites, but I mean, you might decide it's not, right? I mean, what works for you works for you. But especially have a look at the 4 quadrants of urgent versus important tool that I've got up there. That's the Stephen Covey thing. And the questions that I've framed that go with that to help you make sense of it. And third, there's an article on there from Forbes magazine, Time Management for the Rest of Us. And then on a blank piece of paper, draw this scale for yourself, 0 to 10. 0 to 10. And label this scale your master of time management scale. Master of time management scale. 10 on the scale is that you are so efficient, they should write a book about you, right? And 0 is the opposite. What number would you give yourself on that scale today? The next question is this. What do I need to do? What action do I need to take this coming week that will move me one small increment up my master of time management scale? What specific action can I take this coming week to move one small increment? You might have said that you were 6 on that scale at the moment. Well, what's going to move you? What specific action can you take this coming week that'll move you from, say, 6 to 6.1? Then pull out your diary and book that specific action in your diary next week. The kind of action I'm talking about is going to take you 10 minutes every day or half an hour in the week. We're talking very small, simple little actions. And then next week on Thursday, ask yourself the same question again. Again, put it in your diary to remind yourself of that. Where am I on my master scale, time management scale now? And where do I want to be next week? And what can I do next week? Keep asking yourself that question. You will be amazed how your life changes. It's really quite amazing. So simple, so powerful. So please make sure you do these sections. They're not going to take much time at all. Really won't. But doing them, taking the time to do them means you will be taking the first steps to building a business that is fun, truly fun for you, and that sustains you for years to come. And I'd love you to take up the special offer, right? That's the link over there. It's also in your worksheet, and it'll also be on that resources page. The Wayside Chapel will love you for it. It's the best $100 you've ever donated to anything. So that's there. That's the offer. You will get a mountain of valuable insights, learning, clarity out of the health check, the report, the book, and of course, especially the one-on-one session with me via Skype. It's the best deal you've had all year, and you're doing something good for a really amazing charity. So if you take nothing else away from coming here today, ask yourself the question, how can I make this coming week a little bit more efficient? How can I become a little bit more efficient this coming week than I have been last week? Any last questions? Any final last questions, comments? Anita, yes, I can certainly help you talk that through. Absolutely, yeah, by all means. That's a perfect topic to have one of those most pressing issue sessions on. Yeah, I think so. Certainly. If you want to email me more about that, I'm happy to give you some feedback on that as well. Final questions, comments? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Thank you. And I'm stopping the recording right now. Recording.